Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, Merry Christmas. This is a story called Around Christmas. Around Christmas. We went once a year to the deli. We would drive up to the city, and my father, who neither bought nor cooked food for the entire rest of the year, would take us to the deli, and he would spend incredible amounts of money on food and on coffee, special dark roast coffee beans, which came in big brown bags stamped product of Colombia and product of Costa Rica. The coffee would last him all year. He would grind the beans first thing on a Saturday morning, and he had a little stovetop espresso pot, and he would make himself an espresso, and it was the only time in the week when I saw him truly relaxed and happy with his espresso and the paper. In the deli, you had to order at the counter, and then you took your receipt and you had to pay an old woman who sat in a little booth at the back of the shop, and then you had to go and collect your bags from the counter, and we always had so many bags, it was like we were travelling with all our worldly possessions. My father would buy bagels and salt beef and chopped liver and pastrami and matzah meal and rugula and babka and lox and knishes and pickled herring and gefilte fish. He bought everything. It seemed like everything you could buy in that deli, he bought. And this was a man who bought nothing the rest of the year. But best of all was that when we'd finished shopping in the deli, we used to go to another deli just down the road, a different sort of deli, where he would buy cantucci and amaretti and a giant mozzarella, this special mozzarella. It was like a ball with a twisted knot at the end, like a big white punctuation mark. And the purchase of the mozzarella signalled the end of our annual trip. And we were all allowed a little pinch of that mozzarella on the way home. The sweet, soft, pure taste of fresh mozzarella. My father was Jewish. My mother was not. My mother was a lapsed Protestant, and my father was what I suppose you would call fully assimilated. He wasn't just secular, he had gone all the way. There were no bar mitzvahs, no Seder meals, and absolutely no blessing of the Sabbath candles in our house. No mumbo-jumbo. We were brought up entirely without religious education or instruction. The annual trip to the deli was the closest we came to religious observance. It was the only time I ever saw my father with other Jews. It was all Jews in the deli. You knew they were Jews, although they were not Orthodox Jews. They were just ordinary Jews. But there was something about them. There was something about the way my father spoke with them. It was as if something came over him when we entered the deli, and it would last just about until we arrived back home. In the car on the way home, he would let us open the box of rugula, and he would sing us a little song. Roses are reddish, violets are bluish. If it wasn't for Jesus, we'd all be Jewish. He never spoke to us about being Jewish at any other time. We understood it was not something you talked about. When we got home with our vast haul of food and coffee, my mother would always complain because no one but my father ate any of it except for the sweet stuff, and definitely not the gefilte fish, and there was nowhere to store it. She would already have done all the shopping for Christmas, and the fridge and the cupboards would be full, and there was nowhere to put all his stuff. She always called it his stuff. She didn't like it. They didn't divorce until we had left home, by which time they had been married for 27 years. You serve less time for murder, my father joked. When they divorced, I sided with my mother. We all sided with my mother. My father didn't handle it at all well. By that stage, we could all see what it was she didn't like about him. He had always been a rather sad and melancholic man, incapable of expressing emotion or forming close friendships. But when he was younger, he at least had his work, which he had always enjoyed. As he grew older, he seemed to be incapable of taking pleasure in anything. I just needed some fun, my mother would say whenever I asked her years later about the divorce. She meant everyday fun. She wanted someone to laugh with. Everyone wants someone you can laugh with, and my father was not someone you could easily laugh with. He was born in 1946. Too late for them to get me, he liked to say, which was the closest he ever came to making a joke. Sometimes he would say of his older brothers and sisters, whom he had never met, and of his grandparents and of the rest of his family, apart from his mother and father, who had made it to England, maybe they were the lucky ones. It always troubled me, even as a child. It troubled me, but it made my mother despair. If there was a single cause for their divorce, I think that was it. It was that one phrase, my father saying, maybe they were the lucky ones. When my own children were young, around Christmas, I would always try and find time to drive them to a deli, where we too would buy bagels and salt beef and chopped liver and pastrami and matzah meal and rugula and babka and lox and knishes and pickled herring, but not the gefilte fish. It was the best I could do. Thank you.